That this bill be now read a second time. My Lords, let me at the very outset express my thanks to all those members of your Lordship's House who are participating today and express my appreciation for their greatly valued support for this crucial piece of legislation. In their unavoidable absence, I've been asked by the noble Baroness Lady Kennedy of the Shores KC and my noble friends, Lord Carlisle of Berriew KC and Baroness de Souza, to put their support for the bill on the record. I refer to my interest in the Register and thank the Coalition for Genocide Response, of which I'm a patron, and Dr. Ewelina Ohab and the House of Lords Library for their help in preparing for today's debate. My Lords, let me frame the debate with a remark by Boris Johnson when he was Foreign Secretary, as the House of Commons voted to recognise the atrocities in northern Iraq as a genocide against the Yazidis, and which the Foreign and Commonwealth Office refused to do. On March 28th in 2016, Boris Johnson, writing in the Daily Telegraph, said, and I quote, "ISIS are engaged in what can only be called genocide of the poor Yazidis, though for some baffling reason the Foreign Office still hesitates to use the term genocide." My Lords, this bill, with all-party support, seeks to remedy his bafflement. This House and another place are well aware of the causes of the bafflement because there is no adequate mechanism for making a determination of genocide. Following debates on the trade bill and amendments passed here with three-figure majorities, the government recognised the problem and offered a solution in Section 3 of the Trade Act 2021. But, as many noble lords predicted at the time, it is so narrow in scope that ultimately it cannot provide an effective mechanism for genocide determination, or indeed the determination of the serious risk of genocide, and that is what this bill seeks to address. During those powerful debates, and many of the noble lords present in the House today participated in them, we heard in speech after speech examples of the consequences of failing to recognise genocide and the risk of genocide for what they are, and of our failure to honour the obligations laid upon us to predict, to prevent, to protect and to prosecute. Next year will mark the 75th anniversary of the Genocide Convention, the UN Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, and we are nowhere near having clear mechanisms to help us deliver on the duty contained therein to prevent the very core, indeed, of that convention, to prevent never again from happening all over again. Now, these aren't theoretical debates, but as we will hear from members of your Lordship's House, and Noble Lord Collins indicated in the earlier debate, that places such as Tigray will no doubt be referred to during our proceedings. These challenges are current and they are contemporary. When we don't face the same existential realities, the pain, the suffering, well, the human consequences may sometimes seem too abstract or remote. But when we attached this nation's signature to the Genocide Convention, we were accepting a solemn and binding duty to use our voice and our place among the nations to prevent constant recurrence of this crime above all other crimes. On Monday in your Lordship's House, I was able to give the noble Lord, the Minister, a meticulously documented account of some of the earliest examples of this heinous crime, including against the Herero and Nama, and of course the Armenian genocide and the Holocaust. It traces the origins of the Genocide Convention and the obligations to which I've referred to and which we entered into. And it addresses what my noble and learned friend, Lord Hope of Craighead, has said is our dismal failure to make the Convention fit for purpose in our time, and specifically to create a legal mechanism to address evidence and make determinations, which is what this bill seeks to do. That account that I gave to the Minister, authored by myself and Dr. Ohab, also examines what our failures to make determinations of genocide have meant for the Uyghurs in China, for the Yazidis in Iraq, the Rohingya in Myanmar, the Tigrayans in Ethiopia, Christians in Nigeria and North Korea, the Hazara in Afghanistan and for the suffering people in Ukraine. On Tuesday, during a drop-in session organised by the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Freedom of Religion and Belief and the All-Party Parliamentary Group on the Yazidis, I personally experienced the Nobody's Listening VR on the Yazidi genocide. This amazing technology brought back vivid and harrowing memories of my visit to Sinjar, of meeting Yazidi and Assyrian survivors of the barbaric atrocities of ISIS, named as a genocide by the House of Commons, but never accepted, as I had pointed out at the outset of my remarks, by the Foreign and Commonwealth Office as such. Last week, I chaired a session on PSVI in North Korea during an international conference on North Korea, partly hosted by the All-Party Parliamentary Group on North Korea, which I founded and am a co-chair of, held here in Parliament. 8 years after Justice Kirby and the United Nations Commission of Inquiry on North Korea said that crimes against humanity, his finding in North Korea, should be referred to the International Criminal Court, it never has been. Why? Because China would doubtless veto it in the Security Council. Justice Kirby, incidentally, has also said it's possible that the targeting of religious minorities, such as shamans and Christians, might constitute a genocide, a question that has never been considered by a competent court and, as things stand, most likely never will be.
I do support him very strongly. He's mentioned Ukraine. Would he agree that the language as well as the actions of Putin and those around him is clearly a genocide?
I'm grateful to Noble Lord, and he'll be glad to know that I will come to Ukraine as one of the two examples I want to give to your Lordship's House as I proceed with my remarks. The meticulous analysis which I referred to and which I referred to the Noble Lord was written before the shocking discovery of mass graves in Bucha and the hunting down of Hazara in Afghanistan. My Lords, how will that be assessed, and how will those, like those in North Korea, how will they be held to account? In preceding debates, I provided details of some of the genocides to which I have made mention. Today, though, I'm going to refer and focus on the two cases to which I've already given mention. In the second half of 2021, as the Taliban reimposed their rule on Afghanistan, the Hazara once again became a reviled target. Over the months which have followed, we've witnessed specific attacks on Hazara mosques, the bombing of schools and other community places in the predominantly Hazara regions. These targeted attacks increased in April and May, and they have led to hundreds of people being killed. On September the 3rd, the Hazara Inquiry, a joint effort of cross-party parliamentarians from both houses and experts working together, revealed atrocities and called for the promotion of justice for the Hazara in Afghanistan and Pakistan in a report which we published. As a member of the inquiry team, I chaired some of the hearings and met with several members of the Hazara community. I sent that report, of course, to the Noble Lord the Minister. It focuses on the situation in Afghanistan since 2021. It found that Hazara in Afghanistan as a religious and ethnic minority are at serious risk of genocide at the hands of Islamic State, Khorasan Province, ISK, and the Taliban. Our findings reiterates the responsibility of all states to protect the Hazara and prevent a possible genocide, as we are required to do under the Genocide Convention and customary international law. The Taliban had reversed the 20-year progress made in addressing the marginalisation and discrimination experienced by the Hazara minority. Gains, I might add, which were referred to in the report of the Select Committee on International Relations and Defence Committee of your Lordship's House, on which I serve, and which published a report on Afghanistan. The return to power of the Taliban has included brutal acts of violence against the Hazara throughout Afghanistan and a return to terror. In August 22 alone, ISK claimed responsible for several attacks that resulted in over 120 fatalities within just a matter of days. Witnesses told me that they anticipate further attacks because of inaction and impunity in response to the targeting of Hazara, a trend that is likely to continue. This underlines the pressing need, in line with our international obligations, to at least examine the evidence, to make a determination and to protect the Hazara with at least the knowledge that those responsible for these crimes might one day face justice. Many of us have met Afghans, including some of those women judges who fled to the safety of this country. Their passion for the rule of law is one we must not share and not allow, in inverted commas, baffling reasons to prevent us from doing so. And even closer to home, 2022 has shown us that atrocity crimes and possibly even genocide may well be happening on European soil in Ukraine. In questions, speeches and letters to ministers, and during the debate I initiated on July the 21st on food insecurity in developing countries due to the blockade of Ukrainian ports, which the Noble Baroness Lady Smith, the Noble Lord Collins and others in your Lordship's House participated, I've repeatedly asked for greater clarity on the determination that we are attaching to Putin's atrocities, and have encouraged the Minister to invite the International Criminal Court prosecutor, Karim Khan KC, to visit your Lordship's House and to brief us on the ICC's actions and intentions. And I'd encourage the Noble Lord to facilitate that. Since Putin's illegal war on Ukraine began on the 24th of February, evidence of atrocity crimes, be it war crimes, crimes against humanity, and even possible genocide, has accumulated. In May of this year, the Raoul Wallenberg Centre for Human Rights and New Lines Institute for Strategy and Policy published a legal analysis of the serious risk of genocide in Ukraine and Russia's incitement to commit genocide. The report makes two important findings. Firstly, of the evidence of a serious risk of genocide, and secondly, of the direct and public incitement to commit genocide. Among other findings, the report cites a litany of open-source data in relation to both findings including evidence of mass killings, torture, the use of rape and sexual violence, and deportations of children to Russia, about which I've corresponded with Noble Lord the Minister. In relation to the serious risk of genocide, the report analyses the risk factors specific to genocide as per the UN Framework of Analysis for Atrocity Crimes, focusing on evidence of Russia's denial of the very existence of Ukrainians as a people, history of atrocities committed in the past with impunity, past conflicts over resources or political participation, and signs of genocidal intent, including, and I quote, documentation of incitement, targeted physical destruction, widespread or systematic violence, measures that seriously affect reproductive rights or contemplate forcible transfer of children, dehumanizing violence, use of prohibited weapons, strong expressions of approval at control over the protected group, and attacks against homes, farms, and cultural or religious symbols and property. No one can deny that these risk factors have been there for a long time, inexorably culminating with Putin's unleashing of horrific atrocities. If this hasn't concentrated our minds on the urgency of a new approach to genocide in this country, most likely nothing ever will. Instead of offering the same old platitudes, it's time to open our eyes to the evidence that's before us, recognise it for what it is, and to act upon it. This bill introduces two important mechanisms. One that empowers victims of genocidal atrocities to have a genocide determined by a competent court, and one that ensures checks and balances, transparency and oversight over the government's response to genocide globally. Let me spell it out. In Clause 1, the bill empowers victims by way of equipping a personal group belonging to a national, ethnic, racial or religious group or an organisation representing such a person with the power to apply to a court for a preliminary determination that serious risk of genocide or that genocide is being or has been committed. And indeed we know that in order to implement the duty to prevent genocide, as explained by the International Court of Justice in its 2007 judgment, a state is required to act upon serious risk of genocide rather than wait until genocide is being perpetrated. The preliminary determination is not the end goal in itself. No, it's a crucial determination to trigger responses. Indeed, Clause 3 of the bill states that once the court has made a preliminary determination, the Secretary of State must refer the determination as a finding of a United Kingdom judicial body to the country standing accused of the crime, to other countries that are parties of the Genocide Convention, and to other bodies including the International Criminal Court of Justice and the United Nations Security Council. And secondly, in Clause 2, the bill ensures checks and balances, transparency and oversight over our government responses to genocide globally by way of expanding the already existing mechanism for genocide responses in Section 3 of the Trade Bill 2021. To come to an end, my Lords, this is a bill that enjoys all parties' support. The bill provides for the same mechanism as the so-called Genocide Amendment carried by a majority of 153 and 171 in this House. Earlier this year, on the anniversary of being sanctioned by the Chinese Communist Party for my actions in relation to Uyghurs and Hong Kong, I was invited, along with the other 6 sanctioned parliamentarians, to a meeting at 10 Downing Street. The then Prime Minister and the then Foreign Secretary told us that they would support the reform of how we deal with genocide. My Lords, here is an opportunity for the government to honour that promise. I beg to move.
The question is, this bill will be now read as